All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, hello team. This is Abhishek again from the Study Metro Bangalore team. So today we have the Vibhuti who's going to give you the presentation about the studying in the Australia. So whatever the questions you have regarding the Australia educations, after the USA visa down, the Canada and Australia, it's picking up, and most of the students they want to go to the Canada and Australia. So please go through the webinars carefully, and whatever the questions you have, feel free to ask to the Vibhuti, or just mention through the chat line so that I can just ask her. So Vibhuti, you can start from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Abhishek sir. I would just begin by introducing myself. My name is Vibhuti Vyas, and I am working with Study Metro as a branch head from Indore. I have already taken 6 to 7 years of work experience in overseas, and now I'm beginning the Study in Australia webinar. All right. The first thing that I want everyone to know is where exactly Australia is located on the world map. As we see that Australia is a very small continent that is highlighted in yellow. And next to it, we see a very small island, which is New Zealand. Not very close to India and again, not very far. If I talk about Australia, it is one of the smallest continents in the world. But then as a country, it is known as the sixth largest country in the world. Now, if I take a closer look at Australia and its major states, Australia comprises of 6 states, the Western Australia, the biggest but then comparatively isolated than other states. Northern Territory, you would rarely find students going here. South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, this is a students' hub, and Victoria. We also have Tasmania, which just has one university, which is University of Tasmania, located nearby. Now, when we see Australia, as the map right here in front of us, there are two major cities which easily pops out when we think about Australia, which are Melbourne and Sydney. I bet everybody who knows about Australia knows about Sydney and Melbourne. Now, I just want everybody to have a very quick understanding about the cities, the Australia as a country, before we move on towards our actual counseling details. Now, Sydney, as some of you could have visited or those not visited, it's a very stunningly charming and beautiful city. It has amazing harbor and it has world famous tourist spots as well. And it's also known as the largest city of Australia. When we talk about the living scenario in Australia, Sydney is the most expensive. On that note, moving towards the second popular destination, which is Melbourne, which is right here in Victoria. Now, this is a most popular student city. You will find most number of universities and schools in Melbourne. Now, this city is known for its unpredictable weather because it's very often possible to see, in fact, 4 seasons in one day. Next, I just want to have a very quick brief about Gold Coast, which is a very popular tourist destination in the world, in Australia as well. It homes around 10,000 natural reserves and it's a World Heritage Site. And if I would actually say about it, which is easily known to the world, that it's one of the most beautiful tourist locations in Australia and in the world. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now let's have some very quick fun facts about Australia. The biggest property that an Australian owns in Australia is bigger than one of the countries in Europe, which is Belgium. Australia also exports camels to Saudi Arabia, which is mostly used for meat production. It's been one of the founding members of United Nations. Another fact, which is a very amazing fact about Australia, is you can explore every beach in Australia till 10 years. It is normally said, it's very popular among the natives, that if you start exploring every beach in Australia by one day, you would take at least 10 to 15 years to explore the entire beach range in Australia. Now, this is the only continent in the world without an active volcano. Last one on the list is Melbourne is known as the sports capital of not just Australia, but of the world. It is recently declared a sports capital in 2016, and it has snatched this crown from London in UK. Now, another fun fact is Australia is one of the most obese countries in the world. Now, this is a fun fact because Australia is known to be a sport-loving nation. Still, it has around 26% of obesity rate. Melbourne is crowned as world's most livable city 2 years in a row. Melbourne is known as a fashion city, a food city, sports city, party, education, shopping, multicultures, hospitality. It's an easy travel city and what not it has. So this is one of the most deserving crowns that Melbourne has earned. Tasmania, it has the cleanest air in the world. We can't talk about what we have here in India. Speaking of which, Delhi, it completely is in a disrespectable position. Now, Australia is actually an English-speaking nation, but then people do find around 200 different languages and dialects which are spoken in Australia. The prominent among them are Italian, Greek, Arabic, Vietnamese, Cantonese, and Mandarin. Few are very popular and few are almost on the verge of extinction. Now, if you talk about the population level of Australia, it's almost the smallest continent in the world, and it just homes around 2 million people in its country. With the time difference that we see here is it's 5 hours and 30 minutes ahead of India, which means when we begin a day, they are heading towards lunch. When we begin a lunch break, they are already heading towards their home after work. The currency difference is $1 Australian is equal to approximately 50-51 INR as of now. The travel distance is really a good long flight hours, around 12 hours 30 minutes to 13 hours 30 minutes, anything it could take. Capital being Canberra, and the current Prime Minister being the Malcolm Turnbull. He is in position and power since 2015. Now, I just want you all to have a very quick roundup about what Australia is famous for. We all know when it comes to Sydney, we always talk about the popular Sydney Opera House, which has a spectacular view on the exterior and the interior as well. This is always on a must to-do list of every tourist or every student who's visiting Australia. Next, we can see is a Great Barrier Reef. This is an iconic World Heritage Site as it has approximately 900 islands and 3,000 individual reefs. Now, when we talk about the next site, which is Australia famous for, this is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. This is an icon in Sydney, and this is affectionately called Coat Hanger by the natives. Okay, when we see the top two images, these are about the beaches in Australia. I am not going to be actually saying something really more, or I would not exaggerate if I say to be in Australia and to not experience the beach life is a crime anyways. All right, the last thing that I would like to express about Australia is when we talk about cricket, only if you're living under the rocks, you would not know how amazing Australia is for its cricket team, which has won many World Cups, and it has given nightmares to so many countries when they play matches. All right, we have seen these famous faces so many times across in the movies. When we talk about this person, if you guys have seen X-Men, the Wolverine from X-Men, he's from Australia. Are very famous, the Joker from Batman series, he is from Australia. Nicole Kidman, Kylie Minogue. So Australia has given too much of talent on the world map as well. Okay, so a basic overlook about the climatic conditions in the Australia. When we talk about the spring, it starts from September till November. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. This has just gone a bit haywire. When we talk about spring, this is actually December to February. When we talk about summer, it is March to May, and then we have autumn, and then we start the winters. Okay, when you actually talk to a student why he must study in Australia, when we talk about students going overseas, they are picking very popular destinations, one being US, another being UK. But then when the conditions are very difficult in these two countries, especially in UK for the post-study work, in USA with the rates of visas, you can easily suggest students to look forward to Australia, as this is the third most popular international student destination. When we talk about its best universities, we have group of 8 universities which are in the top 100 world rankings. When I mean top 100, 5 of them are in top 50 world rankings, which means that yes, you are getting the best education again in the world, even if you are in Australia. We talk about the inventions which Australians have given us. We can't stay without Wi-Fi. Then there is black box, cervical cancer vaccine, IVF, penicillin. So they do have added a lot to the discovery in the medical and technology field. Now, 5 of the best student cities out of 20 student cities in the world are in Australia. We've already spoken about Melbourne. We have Sydney, we have Adelaide, we have Perth, and we have Wollongong. So these are the best student cities in Australia. Global recognition of Australian education is a very obvious reason that students should look up to for Australian education. Universities are really good brand names. They are research intensive. They are providing all the courses possible, as the diversity of courses in university is always there. They want to study law, they want to study management, architecture, all the courses are available. They are in top ranking universities. There is no reason why a student cannot look forward to study in Australia. Plus, post-study work rights are available, which are still a kind of an issue for many countries. Now, when we have a very quick look at the education framework, we can see below in the purple, we have primary and secondary education up to 12 years. Then there is ELICO's mention, which I would talk about later in a few of my slides. I particularly want to grab attention towards higher education. When we have a bachelor degree of year 1, where he completes his basic diploma, then there is associate bachelor degree with year 2, and then a proper bachelor degree award is given in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, which depends upon the degree of the student. He is doing a BA honors, he is doing a BA Eng honors, he is doing an architecture or any other course. Then we have graduate certificate or diploma. This is rarely suggested to international students because this would not hold any kind of industrial recognition over there if the student wants to work. So we straight away move towards the master's degree. These degrees are of 1 year, 1.5 or 2 years, and then there are doctoral degrees at the PhD level. Now, when we talk about this vocational and pathway studies, students from India, they rarely actually take this particular pathway. These pathway studies are provided by TAFE, TAFE as in TAFE, which are the Technical and Further Education Institutes. They actually provide an easy pathway to the university program where the student is actually not finding himself eligible to have a direct entry into an undergraduate or a postgraduate level. But as I earlier said, international students rarely go for this because visa success rate, it becomes quite lesser when students are applying for pathway programs in Australia. Academic institutions, they are among 10,000 approximately schools. We have 38 universities, and there is vocational education and training available. Around 82 TAFEs which are providing the technical and vocational training. And there are registered training organizations. This is among the organizations which are most used for the local students. These are actually not utilized by international students. Now I'm coming to Group of 8. Now this is, I would say, an Ivy League of Australia, because this Group of 8 is a leading Australian university group which is intensive in research and very comprehensive in general and professional education. 5 among them, like I said, they already hold top rankings, top 50 rankings in the World QS and Times ranking. Australian National University, Western University of Western Australia, Monash University, University of Adelaide, University of Queensland, University of Melbourne, University of Sydney, and University of New South Wales, Australia. These 8 are the main pillars of the rankings in Australia. Normally, when you have students with 80% or 90% in their undergraduate or 12th, you would always find them knowing about these universities, and they would be targeting only these universities in Australia. Apart from the Group of 8, I am here discussing some popular universities by the region, because when students are heading towards Australia, they normally want to pick up some universities which they can go in Sydney or they can go in Melbourne especially. So we have UTS, which is University of Technology Sydney, University of Sydney in Group of 8, Macquarie and Curtin's University in Sydney. Melbourne, as I said, is a student hub. It's an education destination for international students. It has quite a lot number of universities there. We have Monash RMIT, which is Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, University of Melbourne, La Trobe, Deakin, Swinburne University of Technology. Perth, which is one of the favorite student destination, particularly because of its low living expenses and higher industry employment. It does have certain universities like Curtin, Murdoch, and Edith Cowan. These universities are particularly good for those students who have lower or average grades. By lower or average grades, I would mean around 55 or 60%, or something below 65% is still good for these three universities. Now, if I talk about popular courses, not many of you might be doing, but then as we find the US as an engineer's hub, so is Australia. Australia is actually the best known for engineering qualification and engineering employment. I have particularly mentioned four unusual or unconventional courses of engineering, which is metallurgical engineering, aerospace engineering, environmental engineering, and biomedical engineering. When we talk about the management field, the best courses that the student can do here is related to accounting and finance. We do have information technology, a really good architecture, pharmacy, psychology, hospitality and tourism. Of course, Australia is a tourism hub. Environmental and planning courses, agricultural sciences, somebody who wants to do law and criminal justice, or anything which is related to social science and communication, journalism, public relations, everything is available. You name a course and it would be there for undergraduate and postgraduate in Australia. I have added another point which says dual majors are available. Yes, they're available both at undergrads and postgrads. Students normally at postgrad in management, they would be taking a dual major of MBA and MPA, which is MBA and Master of Professional Accounting, or MBA MIB, and which is available in the cost of a single program as well. So they're not paying a lot, but then with grant tuition fees, they can do double majors, which is a good point about Australia again. Now, when we talk about the intakes, it does not follow the regular intakes of other countries, which being September and January. But then the major intakes in Australia are February and July. February is normally the major intake for us because students after 12th, after graduation, when they're awaiting their degree, when they're awaiting their 12th mark sheets, they are rarely able to catch up with the July intake. So February is the major intake for Australia for us. Other minor intakes are only available in selected 9 to 10 universities, which are March and November. Duration of the undergraduate courses are 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. Like I said earlier, it depends upon the course that the student is going for, either an engineering or medical or architecture or law course or a management course. When I talk about postgraduate courses, they have 1.5 to 2 or 2.5-year courses. Here I want to draw the attention of all the counselors, particularly when I talk about the postgraduate course. We do have courses below 2 years for international students, but then we do not actually recommend courses to be taken below 2 years. Post-study work rights in Australia are possible only when a student is studying in Australia for 2 years. So if at all you find a course which is 1.5 years, already you must be informing the student that you should be taking a 2 years course in order to get that PSW. Now they also have credit waivers available, which student is likely to get even if he's studying from an average DVV university from Indore. Now with this credit waiver, normally when the course is of 2.5 years for masters, when he applies for credit waiver, that course becomes 2 years. Or if he's applying for a 2 years course and then he applies for credit waiver, the course duration of masters become 1.5 years. So do not apply for credit waivers if after waiver the course duration will actually go below 2 years. Now, when I talk about the undergraduate eligibility, when we are talking about group of 8 universities, it essentially needs to be in 80% or above. The higher it is, the better you would find the chances of student getting in the universities. When other universities, we talk about it is 65% and above. English proficiency, it is very nominally required, 6.0 overall bands with 5.5 individual bands. If the student is appearing for TOEFL, he is okay to go with if he has 60 IBT score. Now, when I talk about GTE compliance, if some of you have been doing Australia, you do understand the concept of GTE. I would just explain it in brief. GTE is genuine a temporary entrant. Now, when the universities are giving offer letters, they are allowing the students to come and study their courses. They interview the student prior to giving the offer letters. This is done by some universities before offer letter. This is done by some other universities after they give offer letters. This GTA compliance has to be met by every candidate, which would mean that he would be needing to have a very specific study reason to go and study in Australia. He is aware of what course will actually give him the benefit in his career or in his further studies if he's studying this course in Australia. And he needs to have a very specific plan, a very specific career or profession plan after coming back from Australia. As in, he needs to prove that he would not be willing to stay back in Australia and work. He just is going for a study purpose. When I talk about study gap, I would recommend in undergraduate, do not actually entertain students who have more than 2 years. If they are more than 2 years, you can discuss with me. We can still handle the cases on case-to-case basis. For postgraduate eligibility, undergraduate aggregate has to be 70% and above. Now, unlike if I talk about other countries, we easily deny students an assurity of an offer letter even if he has 80% to top 50 ranking universities in US. But then if you have 70% and above, you can still get into the top 2 or top 3 ranking universities of Australia. How great is that? So this is another point about Australia, that with this percentage, you can still get into top rankings. 60% and above is still good with other universities. English proficiency, self-explanatory again. IELTS, we need 6.5 overall bands with 6.0 individual. TOEFL, ATIBT is good to go. GTA compliance is taken for undergraduate and postgraduate both. They shouldn't be sounding or looking or presenting their profiles as a potential immigrant application. So a GTA compliance has to be dealt with here. Backlogs, group of 8, please do not have any backlogs for group of 8 applications. If at all, 2 to 3 are still good to go. 8 to 9 for other universities. More number of backlogs, more chances of rejection. Even if the university gives offer letter, it would be a rejection for visa. Study gap, now a study gap here, if it's 1 year, and even if you do not have any explanation for that, it is still okay. Anything which is more than 1 year, the university wants to know what the student has done. If he has worked part-time, if he has worked full-time, if he has taken any other C, C++ or any other program, any examination, you need to have an explanation. Now, I've mentioned graduate record examination. Now, none of you must have heard that GRE could be a requirement in Australia as well. But yes, for very selected courses, for very selected group of 8 universities, we do need this examination. For example, MS in Finance in the University of Melbourne or Monash University, it does need a GRE exam. Work experience, we do have certain universities who are providing fresher MBAs, but then it's always suggested if somebody is looking for an MBA, you go with the work ex for minimum 2 years. Now, application documents, it's a very easy one. Academic documents needed are 10th, 12th, undergraduate, postgraduate mark sheets or degree. Now, here I would again say that if a student has done masters already and he wants to go for another masters, it is completely fine that he can show his masters and still show a valid motive to do another masters or MBA degree from Australia. They're completely fine with it. So you need to have academic documents, you need to have IELTS scorecard, passport copy, statement of purpose, a valid resume if the gap is more than 1 year, recommendation letters and employment certificates if the student has taken any professional full-time work experience. Now, certain details about application processing, which you all must know. When we talk about the deadlines, it is usually said that you should start well 7 to 8 months ahead prior to the intake. By that I mean, if it is July, we should easily start the applications by now. It is February. We could have started the applications by the month of May or June. Now, applications here, they are processed without LOR. We do not need to make the students wait that they get the LOR. They give us the recommendation letters, only then the applications are going to be processed. They don't need IELTS at the time of application because they do issue conditional offer letters, which is a great part again. An application fee as well is not needed by around 70–80% of the universities. When we talk about the processing time, I'll say a practical processing time for quite a few universities has been 2 days. as in 48 hours. But then we still need to inform students that a nominal time of 2 to 6 weeks has to be given to the university so that they do not disturb us again and again, and we can get back to them with a decent amount of time for their offer letters. When we talk about the mode of application, it is pretty simple again. No couriers have to be sent. It is scanned application for many universities. It is online application for some. But then you need to understand one thing here, because some universities need original scan, some would need attested by notary, some would need attested by the agent. So before you make any application, you can get in touch with me. I'll detail you about how the application has to be sent to the particular university. Application fees, like I said before, by 70-80% universities, it is not going to be needed. When they need it, it is straight 100 Australian dollars or nothing. That's it. So this is a basic application processing detail that everyone must adhere with. Now, when I talk about the study cost, Australia is normally popular for being very expensive. And so it is here. Undergraduate courses are approximately 25,000 to 39,000 Australian dollars per annum. Postgraduate courses are 27,000 to 45,000 Australian dollars per annum. When I'm talking about how the fees increases or how the fees range is higher, it is again closely related to the ranking of the university. It is closely related to the course level of the that the student is picking. As in, if he's picking any clinical course, any practicing course, the fees is surely going to be higher. When we talk about the scholarship aspects here, now we do know that every university has certain scholarships which are mentioned on their websites. But then the scholarship for international students are clearly very few in number. Now, when we talk about how they can get these scholarships, they need to be either brilliant in their academic track record. By brilliant, I mean definitely something around 85-90% or above. And they even check the qualitative aspects of the profile. For example, if a university wants to give an undergraduate student scholarship, they would ask them to write an essay on how they actually witnessed or they experienced their leadership style, or somebody complimented them on their leadership style on a particular occasion. So they want the students to not only be academically sound, but then they want them to carry certain skills with them when they come down and they join the campus with other local students. So for scholarship, if any student is hell-bent on it, you can ask me whenever you're applying to a university. I'll inform you further about how scholarships can be applied and they can be received. Living costs and accommodation. Now there have been new changes with July 1, 2016. The cost of living that every student for 1 year needs to maintain in their funds to show in visa, it is going to be 19,830 Australian dollars. In case a dependent or a partner or spouse is accompanying them later, for them they need to show the funds of approximately 7,000 Australian dollars. For child, it would be approximately 3,000 Australian dollars. Now, accommodation options which are mentioned here, they are available in variety of aspects. Students can pick a homestay, they can rent a property, they can share the property on the rental or have that by their own selves. They can take on-campus housing. There's another very popular destination of accommodation in Australia, which is Urbanist. Urbanist is having their housing locations, which is very into the close proximities of universities. They are particularly located in Melbourne and Sydney and few more destinations in Australia. And they have a direct contract with the universities, so they have their own beds which are safe and they're blocked for the university students. So you can even pick Urbanist because they have amazing options for accommodations. Now, we mentioned other weekly expenses that international students are going to be bearing. They need to be bearing their groceries or eating out costs. They need to have the gas and electricity, the phone and internet, any public transport. Usually public transport becomes even cheaper because on the student card, they are provided very discounted rates when they are traveling inside the city. And then the leisure and entertainment. So weekly expenses or monthly expenses are going to go way up or way down as per the lifestyle of the student. Technically for Sydney, yes, it is expensive, but in other cities, student can still manage with the part-time work. It would be easily possible. Now there is these are two terms which I want to discuss with you. Normally, when you would be looking forward to search some courses for the students, you would always find certain terms like CRICOS and ELICOS in the university websites. Now, when I talk about CRICOS, It says Commonwealth Register of Institutions and Courses for Overseas Students. Now, this is actually a register of Australian education providers of the universities. Only with this registration, they are actually allowed to offer the courses to overseas students. So whenever you will be searching the courses, you will always find CRICO's code for every course in every university, whosoever is providing that course to international student. Another part is ELICOS. ELICOS is what I would say it easily resembles with pre-sessionals in UK or ESL in USA. It is an English language intensive course for overseas students. Now, ELICOS is actually a course which is not just available for students, but then actually it can be taken as a separate course by even any visitor or even any tourist. So this ELICOS comes into action when you have a student who is not fulfilling the requirements of IELTS and TOEFL. But here I again remind you one important thing, that to get ELICOS, you still need to be giving IELTS or TOEFL examination. You need to show the university that the student has given the exam, he could not score, only then they will allow your student to take ELICOS, not without the exam scorecard. Now here I've given the test scores for ELICOS. ELICOS is actually available in duration of 5 weeks, 10 weeks and 20 weeks. It is usually done prior to the course commencement that the student is going for. So let's say a student has a score of 5.5, he can be given ELICOS of 5 weeks. If a student has a score of 5 in IELTS, he would be essentially taking a 10 weeks course. If a student has even lower bands, he will have to go for a 3 months, which is 3 to 4 months, which is 20 weeks ELICOS. So this is how ELICOS will be working. The lower scores in English proficiency test will mean the higher duration of ELICOS and obviously a higher amount for the same thing, which is borne by the student. So you need to make the student aware that they need to avoid ELICOS at all the given point of time, because yes, not having a good English proficiency will somehow hamper their visa success rate. Now, when we talk about the work options, there is 2 years of post-study work available after 2 years of study duration. Student can do this course as one course of masters, or student can also do this, complete the study duration as 2 separate courses, which combinedly gives them a 2 years of study plan. But normally you need to recommend a student to take a 2-year study course from here only and then go for a proper masters of 2 and above years. During studies, the student is allowed to work 40 hours per week fortnightly when the sessions are on, and he can work 40 hours per week when the sessions are off. I'm sorry, this is 40 hours per week fortnightly, not per week, this is per fortnight. Now coming towards the visa details, there have been recent changes in July 2016. The student visa system has shifted from SVP to SSVF. SVP has been a streamlined visa processing, and SSVF is streamlined student visa framework. Now the major change under this framework has been, earlier under SVP, there were multiple subclasses under the student visa application. Student actually picked the subclass of application according to the course that he was going for in Australia. But as of now, no matter which course he is going for, no matter which level of course of undergrad or master's or PhD he is going for, there is a single subclass application, which is subclass 500 for study visa application in Australia. Currently, the application form has completely gone from paper-based to paperless application. So these are the major changes that have taken place. They are now in effect from July 2016. The visa documents that we can now see, this is going to be a very short and crisp list. You can discuss a case-to-case list with me later when you have students. We need an electronic confirmation of enrollment. This COE again resembles the I-20 of USA or the CAS letter of UK. We have online visa application form to be filled, which is form 157A and form 956. These are easy forms, but then you still need some kind of supervision and guidance, because there are some details which are very critical in these forms. So whenever you're filling this form, you can get in touch with me. I'll explain you how to do that. You need an original passport. Then we need to give them a passport colored copy, all pages notarized, all pages. All the education certificates have to be given, again notarized. Education certificates from 10th mark sheet to 10th passing certificate, 12th mark sheet, 12th passing certificate, all individual semesters, all the degrees. If the original is not there, provisional is going to very well work. So you need to ensure that all the education certificates are complete in the application. You need the test score of English, again, which has to be notarized. We need the employment certificates, notarized again if you have shown to the university. We need 5 colored passport size photographs. Now here we need 2 affidavit of supports. One is about the sponsors, like we have been doing in other countries, especially in the US. One affidavit of support has to be education and financials. Now in this particular affidavit, I do have a particular format which we usually fill up for the students. Every education mark sheet, every financial that they are adding in their application, every detail of that is entered in this affidavit of support. So this is a very detailed affidavit. I will explain it to you later whenever you come towards your visa. We need to have a very, very strong statement of purpose, because this is the only chance when the student can explain why is he going to Australia, how he would have strong plans to return back to India, how he is actually having a very strong and established home ties in India, because this is an opportunity which student get in USA when he's facing an interview. But this SOP has to be dealt with very seriously by every counselor. Then we need to have financial documents of liquid funds. Now by liquid funds, I mean the amount that we need to show is your living expenses, which I already explained it earlier, the living expenses of the student, 19,630 Australian dollars. Then we need to show the airfare, which is going to be 2,000 Australian dollars. We need to show the Overseas Student Health Cover, which is OSHC. Now this student health cover is usually covered in the tuition fees of the international student. It is always mentioned in every university's offer letter or COE, which is confirmation of enrollment. So the students can take the health cover which is provided by the university, and they need to show the amount for the same. When I talk about the tuition fees, you need to show 1 semester tuition fees for first year, because another semester will be already paid before you get the COE. This is a mandatory part to receive a COE. To receive that COE, to receive that visa offer from the university, you need to be paying them 1 semester tuition fees. The other semester is going to be shown in the visa documents as liquid funds. When we talk about the financial documents of fixed property, again, we need it all notarized. The liquid funds that we are showing, we need it in the form of original, as in original passbooks or the education sanction letter or the original FD. We need that original. Then we need the evidence of relationship with sponsors, essentially the birth certificate, or we can even add up when there are other family sponsors, for example, the grandparents, or for example, other paternal or maternal uncles or aunts, closely blood relations. So we need to show certain documents that they are related to our parents, and obviously we can show the proof that we are related to our parents as well. Then we need a CA statement, which has to be original, and it is a very elaborate statement. Then we need supporting document of new deposits. Now this is one of the prime concern of many Australian applicants, that they fail to show the deposits which are old. They fail to show old funds. Now new money is not acceptable by DIAC, by Australian High Commission. For example, if a student has got some amount in his account recently, he could be showing a sale deed that he sold a property, that the parents sold a property. So in case it's a fresh money, it is still good to go only when you have a written paper proof of that, that how that amount actually came in your accounts. But then you need to be preparing your students the moment you've put their application, that you need to start preparing your liquid funds from now, and they don't need to wait for the visa letter to prepare the liquid funds. Then they can take even education loan sanction letter with them. We also read a medical report form, which is only taken by the authorized panel of doctors available in India. And this medical is nothing but, the medical that they usually take is a chest x-ray, they take it for HIV, and they take it for hepatitis B or C. So these 3 are the medical tests which a student needs to undergo whenever he is going to apply for the study visa. If your student is going for undergraduate program and he is under 18 when he is applying for visa, you need to make sure that he can provide you a local guardian in Australia. That is going to be very important. And that guardian provides an undertaking to you, to the High Commission for the student, that till the student turns 18, he will be looking after the student's emergency requirements. So you essentially need a local guardian in Australia if the student is under 18, and we need that local guardian's police clearance certificate from Australia itself. So these two documents are going to be very important. And apart from that, there will be another visa application form that would be signed by the local guardian. So make sure when you're dealing with under 18 students, you already clear this fact with them. Now, these are the VFS global centers we have in India. Another aspect of this application is that your students, they do not need to actually physically be present at this VFS global centers in India. They can submit the documents at our centers and we can courier the documents to these VFS global centers. That's it. So we have these centers available at all the prominent locations in India. Here is a list of the panel of doctors. We can see the panel of doctors again. Only with these panel of doctors, we would usually see all the Apollo hospitals. We would see the Fortis in Bangalore. And there are certain other diagnostic centers. I will provide you with the link. There is actually a HAP ID which is created for the student. This HAP ID has to be provided to the panel of doctor wherever he is going for his medicals. So I would be creating the HAP ID for any student who's actually going for the medicals for visa. So you can get in touch with me for the same thing. Happy counseling, guys. You can now ask me any questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Vibhuti. It was really wonderful webinar, and it was one of the top
Thank you,
webinar
sir.
which we had. Yeah. So thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank you, sir.
everything. It was really nice. All the points I think you have covered. But still, all
Yeah.
the counselors, if you have any questions regarding the Australia education, please feel free to ask to the Vibhuti. Vibhuti, I have a few of the questions for you. Like, what is the education gap? You mentioned that if they have the 1 year of education gap, they don't have to mention.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, if they have more education gap, so what kind of documents they can mention
Right.
at the time of the admission?
So when they have more than, like, for especially undergraduate, we should not actually entertain students who have 3 years or 4 years. But then let's say it's more than 1 year, we can actually show, let's say, some kind of examination tickets as well. Like students, they usually take the gaps when they're appearing for certain examinations. So even if, let's say, we provide certain hall tickets to the university and the High Commission, that student was preparing for this exam, he was giving this examination, so he had to undergo this gap. So even that is fine at the stage of undergraduate. But then when it is postgraduate, he should essentially show certain productive activity that he's undergone into an academic training, even if that was a very small certificate program at a local level, at a local institute, or he has undergone a proper work, a full-time or part-time work or internship or something. So he can show all these documents. We must try that the documents that the students provide, they need to be very genuine, they need to be very true. Any forged document that is recognized, that is traced at any process of the university application or visa application, and the student is barred to apply any kind of visa, to apply even a tourist visa or any PR file back in Australia for 10 years. So here the counselors need to understand that the students need to have very genuine and original documents.
Okay, okay. And as you mentioned, if the students worked in some kind of IT company, let's say for 8 to 10 years, still he can apply
Yeah.
for any kind of post-graduation program.
He can still apply. Definitely, he can still apply. In fact, one of my recent cases were I had two IITians. One was from IIT Guwahati and IIT Delhi. They were already in MTech from IIT and they had individually 5 and 6 years of work experience in India. And then they moved towards an MBA course. So even that is perfectly fine, provided we can justify the reason why they need a higher level of studies all over again. So here comes the role of a very strong personal statement and a very strong application that the counselors need to take care of.
Okay, okay. And like we do in the Canada, like we open up account in the Scotia Bank or in the
That
Germany,
is,
we open account in the.
that's not needed, sir.
It's not
That's not
needed.
needed. Not
Okay.
at all. This is an option in New Zealand, but then this concept does not exist in Australia at all. They can keep their amount in their education loan, in their own funds, in their own account. They can show it that ways.
Okay, okay. And what about the liquid fund you mentioned that the students has to show at least
Okay.
one institution fee and all and the living expense?
Uh, The liquid funds that they need to show, I'll explain again. The liquid funds need to comprise of the living amount, the living fees, which I already mentioned in one of my slides. There has to be an OSHC health cover, which is mentioned in the offer letter. It is usually up to 2,000 Australian dollars or 2,500 Australian dollars, and an airfare amount, which is 2,000 Australian dollars. Now, apart from these three things, the student pays the first semester fees of the first year, and the second semester unpaid fees has to be a part of the liquid funds. And the liquid funds are essentially the savings account of student or very close blood relatives, fixed deposits, or education loan sanction letter. But also, we can include provident funds, we can include EPF, PPF, GPF, we can include public like post office savings, we can include any shares, we can include the LIC premiums, we can include all of that. So that is acceptable. We just need to understand that we explain the student how the paperwork has to be presented for a certain fund that he's showing. That's it.
Okay. And is there any kind of duration? Is there so that they have to maintain the funds, let's say for 3 months or 6 months?
Definitely. 3 months. 3 months is a minimum recommendation that they need to do it. 3 months to 6 months in the savings account, and same for the fixed deposit. Like I said, new funds are still entertained. They are very well welcomed, provided they do have a very strong paperwork for that. Otherwise, 3 to 6 months.
Okay. We have a question from Praveen from Mumbai that is the students allowed to work off campus during the studies?
They are allowed to work off campus during the studies. They are very well allowed. The only thing is, I mentioned it is 40 hours per fortnightly, and this 40 hours works as they are allowed 15 hours in the first week and 25 hours in the second week. This is how they're allowed. They can work off campus.
Okay. And is this like a proper internship? So it's like working in the McDonald's or somewhere else.
They can have proper internship as well. I would just here just quickly narrate a very small example of one university. These universities in Australia, they're very rich. They have humongous campuses. For example, Macquarie University in Australia, they have in their campus approximately 25 MNCs who have taken their campus grounds as a rental for their offices. So whenever Macquarie students, international and local students, they're looking for any part-time or full-time jobs, these companies have to provide jobs as at the first preference to Macquarie University students. So when we talk about these universities, they have amazing campus, they have amazing employment partnerships. So yes, students can very well be finding work which is related to his field, which is an internship, a part-time internship. But then here, I would say that internships are never embedded in any curriculum like we find that in US or any other country. Internships in Australia are only embedded in curriculum when they are hospitality or culinary or tourism internships. Other courses, that is a plain taught program. Internships as extra part-time can still be taken by the student.
Okay, okay. The second question asked by the Durgesh is that do I have to complete my study within a certain time frame, or can I extend my studies student visa in Australia?
Durgesh, you can very well do that and you can extend. I'm sure you're going to Italy, but then in Australia, you can extend that. Now, on that note, I will let you know how the visa will be granted to the student when he applies for a study visa. The visa that gets stamped on the student, the expiry date, the validity of that visa is his course duration plus 3 months. So definitely, if student needs certain extra time, he needs to get his study visa extended. That extension is possible. It should not be extended more than 16 months at any given point of time.
Okay, okay. And how much time for it take by the embassy to process the visa?
Approximately 4 weeks is what we need to keep in hands. As a practical matter of experience, we have received it within 2 weeks. Now, with the Australian High Commission, it is also possible to email them and check the status of the application of the student. So they revert us back in case there is some document which is missing and we can provide it to them later. So 2 weeks to 4 weeks, we can provide student an essential time of 4 weeks to be kept in mind when he is applying for visa. a minimum 4 weeks. That has to be told to student. But then at an insider level, we know it could be 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay. You also mentioned in your slides that for those students who have the low IELTS, let's say for 4.55 and
Yes.
5.5, they can
Yeah.
appear with the ELICUS program, but still the visa chances are very less.
Yeah, so what happens is when we talk about the visa rejection letters, they specifically have an English proficiency which is mentioned at the last of the rejection reasons. So ELICOS, although it is a support and assistance that they are providing the students, but then if the student can repeat an IELTS examination and we can make him score higher, that he can meet the eligibility requirement, we would recommend that before, because ELICOS will charge more and ELICOS will also actually make him go before 2 to 3 months of his course, and many students are not prepared for that. For example, if you're beginning your program in February, for ELICOS, you will have to leave India by the month of November. So students might not be prepared with the financials for that, for the fee payment. So make sure if the student is really good by, improvising a certain level, if he can give the exam, again, he can get a proper score, go for IELTS and TOEFL again. ELICOS is a last resort. Let's take it as a last resort.
Okay. And do we have any kind of education gap? Oh, sorry, age gap. It's like in the USA, we send the students till 40 to 45 years also for the MBA program. What about in the Australia?
For Australia, again, for MBA or PhD programs, the age gap will not matter provided the student has been taking a proper work experience in the entire study gap. When we talk about undergraduate, 2 to 3 years, that's it. For MBA programs, we can do that. But then when they have, for example, this is again an experience which I'm sharing. A few of my students, they were willing to apply for MS programs in Australia after approximately 8 and 9 years experience. University has returned the application stating that this particular profile is more suitable for MBA with this kind of experience, and you do not suit our MS requirements. So with a huge work-ex, you can suggest MBA to the students, ask them to not look for MS.
Okay. And what about the dependent? The students can bring their dependent along with their studies.
Yes, they can bring the dependents as well, and which is why I also mentioned the dependent person and the child cost, living cost as well. But then usually when we apply for a study visa, the dependent visa should, it can be by the rules, it can be applied with the student visa. But then we always ask the student that he should get the visa, he should go there, and only after 5 to 6 months, the dependent should follow the student.
Okay. Like,
Also, particularly for, I'm so sorry to interrupt, particularly for dependent cases, there are also cases when there are newly married couples and it's been just 1 year or 2 years of marriage. Now, there have been extreme situations where Australian High Commission was asking us for even an album as in this marriage is socially approved. It's not that they have taken the marriage to a courtroom, they just got legally registered and they're applying as a dependent. It has to be socially approved marriage. So they do go to insane levels to check whether this marriage is like very valid and very legal in India or not.
okay. Um, Again, like in the Canada, dependent can work full time along with their their study visa of their spouse. Still, it's allowed
Yeah.
by the Australian government that dependent can work there,
Australian government, sir, the dependents are rarely going till the time of study visa, but then yes, they have been working.
so they can work full time there.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, um, the another
But
question asked by, yeah, please
yeah.
go.
Yeah. No, no, on that, having said that, I was saying that you will rarely find students who are taking this kind of education, which is very expensive, and then they're taking dependents with them. This rarely happens in Australia. Dependents want to accompany students in New Zealand and Canada. Dependent cases are rarely seen in Australia. I would say 1 in 1,000 cases would come like that.
Okay, okay. So another question asked by the Kritika is that once the students get the visa, they can stay in the country even the classes is not started.
No, they can't stay in the country when the classes are not began. They are not leaving India, though they're not entering India before 1 month of the course start duration. So you will never find a student who is entering Australia 3 months or 4 months before the course starts.
Okay, so it's like a same like a USA that they cannot
Exactly,
travel.
exactly.
Okay, okay, that's great. Okay, so I think we are close to 1 hour now, and
Yes,
we ask all kind of questions whatever we have. But again, all the
surely.
counselors understood the webinars, and if not, uh, you can always touch with the Vibhuti, and you can ask whatever the questions you have. So thank you very much, Vibhuti.
Thanks a
In
lot.
short notice, you have prepared the wonderful webinar, and we look
Thank you so
forward to
much.
have the New Zealand as soon as possible.
Absolutely. I'll be looking forward to Australian applications now from the entire team. Thanks a lot for listening with patience. Thank you
Thank you
all.
very much, everybody. Thanks. Bye bye.